Hello, my cutie pies and sweetie patooties. Hello, my sweetie pies and cutie patooties. How are you? Today, I bring to you my February wrap up. This is quite late. I was supposed to do this on the weekend. I ended up reading 6 books in February, which as of now is an all time high. I've usually only been able to read like 3 books a month, but I think I'll even be able to surpass that this month, this April, so stay tuned. I did little pie charts in my reading journal, and I do want to get videos out of my reading journal, but it is very, very unfinished at the moment. So I read 6 books. 4 of those were audiobooks, which is what really bumped up those numbers. One was physical, one was ebook. 2 were fantasy, 2 were magical realism, 1 was romance, and 1 was sci fi. 4 were by female authors, and 2 were by male authors. 3 of these books I already kind of talked about in a bit more extent in my reading vlog, and so I feel like I'm not really going to talk too in depth about them here then. The first book that I finished was Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. And this was a pretty bittersweet story. It's about this young girl who ends up losing her family to a disaster that happened when she came into possession of some alien seed, and then kind of turned into Death's Apprentice, if you will, where with one touch she could kill people. And so she's kind of just a nomad, and she is going from town to town. She's all alone. This is set in the future, so this is like sci-fi slash dystopian. And so she cannot touch any technology. As soon as she touches like a car or any technology, it immediately dies. And she has a little fox companion, which is really cute. Her name kind of gets around the fact that she brings death everywhere that she goes. And sometimes she uses this kind of for good in a way where she will help families or people that have terminal illnesses, for example, to kind of help them pass peacefully. And this is just a story where she's holding on to something for a very long time and going to great lengths to get there. It's kind of aimless, but she also does have a goal because she loses the seed, and so she is trying to find it again. To be honest, I don't really remember how it ends. So, apologies for that. But what I do know is that this talks a lot about, loss and grief, the fact that she's by herself, and because everyone is so scared of her. And it was really interesting to see the range of behaviors of how different people would react towards her, and some of them would be very, very mean and brutal and tell her to get out because they don't want her bringing death to them, and others would be very scared. And there were only a select couple that were actually very welcoming towards her and actually treated her with more kindness than she usually would see. But for the most part, people are scared of her. And it's funny because she's only like maybe a 13-year-old girl, maybe younger. This is a story talking about themes of like building a reputation and then seeing other people's perceptions of you and how that reputation precedes you and how other people will treat you. This was 3 stars. Again, I can't really remember too much more details because there wasn't really much more to it. I don't really have like too strong or too negative opinions about it. It was nice. It was cute. It was kind of sad. The next book that I finished was A Court of Silver Flames. I'm finally caught up. I'm finally fucking caught up. I still haven't caught up on Throne of Glass, even though I started that like 8 years ago. But I finally caught up to A Court of Silver Flames. And boy, was this a roller coaster. It was a very, very deep character study. And I feel like people have such polarizing opinions of this because obviously it is centered around Nesta. And people either seem to hate her or love her. And I don't really understand how you can still finish this book and hate Nesta. Like that just doesn't compute, you know? There's so much character building that you see her become so much stronger in herself and what she is capable of, and her relationships with other people. And boy, I literally flew through this book. I can't tell you anything about the plot if you don't know, if you're not there yet. But I would assume that you know A Court of Thorns and Roses. That's just kind of goes unsaid. Literally, everyone and their mothers knows about this series. As soon as it ended, I was like, okay, 5 stars. Bam. But I mean, like, I kind of like let it sit. I feel like things happened a bit too quickly with the trials that she had to overcome, if you will. I feel like things were made a bit too easy for her when it got to the point of her having to. Oh my god, how do I say this? How do I say this without giving anything away? Okay, a lot of this, we see her struggling so much in the beginning with a lot of different things, with her relationship with everyone around her, with herself and her self esteem. We see her training really, really, really hard. And we see such a tangible change in the person that she becomes by the end of this book, which I think that's one of my favorite parts about stories and like about books. I feel like I am definitely love character studies and I love seeing the depths and the mind and the thoughts that go on in the characters' minds, and the fact that she was such an enigmatic persona in the previous books because everything was in Feyre's perspective. Now we finally get to see the piece of her mind, and it's pretty bleak. Like, I'm not gonna lie, some things were pretty repetitive and kind of annoying in the way that she sees things. But to be fair, like, it was pretty warranted for the most part. Some things were just plain rude, but for the most part, like I see where she's coming from, in the way that she was acting, in the way that she was trying to cope with everything that was happening around her, and the relationship in this. Yeah, no, I'm like blushing just thinking about that. Like, sorry, I had to change the lighting. I hope that's better. The relationship, they're so cute together. Oh my god. Not to mention the spice was spicing, you know, a lovely little seasoning to the already 5 star dish, you know? So we see her character break down a lot, and I think the whole staircase thing, I'm sorry, I'm gonna, I'm sorry, this is kind of just gonna turn into a if you know, you know discussion, but there was kind of like a metaphor that was also very literal of a staircase where she was constantly trying to descend the staircase of like 10,000 steps. And the fact that we see her like going and trying over and over and over. Was it 10,000 or 1,000? Because whichever one it is, that's a lot, honey. Okay, I feel like constantly seeing her try to do that and then seeing her fail and then doing it again, that was such a great metaphor just for the whole book and just the entire book, and just her whole trajectory in general. But again, I feel like there were kind of pacing issues in a sense where when it came to her needing to retrieve the things that she needed to retrieve, I feel like those were a bit easy. Yes, she came across obstacles, but there definitely wasn't as big of a struggle as I thought that it would there would be. And maybe that's just due to her nature and her power in general, which like it makes sense. But also, not just the retrieving part, but also the trial part. If you know, you know. I'm so sorry for those who are so lost right now, but stay with me. I feel like you'd expect Nesta to go through that, you know, especially since we see Feyre going through the shit that she went through, that now finally we're seeing Nesta go through something relatively similar. But again, I feel like everything happened way too fast, but I don't know if that's maybe just with the speed of how much I was reading it in like a single sitting, or if that was a problem with the book itself. I don't know. Let me know. Like, for the most part, I love this. It was amazing. I found it to be a super super special book. I loved it, and it reminds me a lot of my older sister. And if you're watching this, which you should be, hi, love you. Um, but it reminds me of her a lot in the sense where, and you already know this, you know, you already know this, hun. where she's stubborn as hell. She is stubborn as hell. But she goes through this big character arc in the sense where she learns how to kind of deal differently with her problems and come through on the other side and be super resilient. And I think also her wit and her kind of subtle sense of humor reminds me of my sister as well, because she can be funny, but her sense of humor is very different from mine. um, Love you. Okay, the next book that I finished was The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. And this was definitely not what I was expecting that it would be, because this is a lot more magical realism than I thought that it would be, because it's very much based in real life. This is set, I believe, in 1924, and it deals a lot with race and police brutality. But the speculative aspect of this comes in with a cult of some kind. But I feel like I really would have liked to have that aspect be expanded on. I feel like this whole speculative cult aspect really wasn't explained in any capacity. Things just happened, and then we get cut off from the main character's perspective to look at the perspective of a police officer. And I feel like we lost so much information within that period. I was kind of disappointed that we didn't see the experience of the main character, Black Tom, during that time when we had the police officer's perspective. I didn't really like that because I wanted to explore more about his role and what exactly he was doing or preparing for. But I guess it kind of adds to the end and what he ended up doing, which was pretty satisfying, I will say. In a very dark way, it was satisfying the sort of, let's say, revenge that was done. But at the same time, like the revenge was taken, but nothing will ever be enough, especially in the sense that this deals with such a larger, when it comes to police brutality, you're dealing with a whole like large corporation. You're dealing with the whole system. So even if you take one down, that that doesn't necessarily do anything for the masses. The speculative twist was really interesting, but again, I feel like the main problem that I have with speculative fiction is that nothing is ever explained. And I mean, I feel like I get the fact that that can be part of the message, but it frustrates me. What can I say? It frustrates me. I feel like there's like a hidden message that I'm constantly trying to pick apart the metaphors. I love doing literary analysis like that, especially when I was in English, when I was in high school. Um, and so I love trying to pick apart the bigger meaning behind the metaphors. But speculative fiction just it leaves so much more to be desired. The cult aspect and the thing that they believed in specifically was really cool and really interesting. And I feel like it definitely could have dived into a more sci-fi element than it did. And so I feel like I was definitely missing some of that. But in terms of the writing and the character and the emotion, you could feel the emotion, even though in a sense it was kind of the lack of emotion, where his response to some tragedy was kind of just a numbing response. He couldn't feel anything. It was kind of hard for him to process what he had gone through and what just happened, that it kind of just turned numb. And you could feel that, like, especially with how tragic and harrowing the reality is. You could feel the fact that the way that he's expressing his emotions are kind of in a more quiet rage, if that makes sense. Like, he feels the rage and he feels the emotions and everything, but it's definitely a bit more internalized rather than an external sort of expression of anger and rage. I gave this like 3 stars. Again, more that I wanted to be explained, but I felt that the conclusion was relatively satisfying and the writing was very nice how it came around to how you could feel his emotions. The next book I read was Riot Baby by Toshi Onyebuchi, and I already talked pretty extensively about this in my last vlog, so I will link that so that maybe if you want to check that out, you can. This was another speculative fiction that I had a hard time with, and it dealt with pretty similar themes to The Ballad of Black Tom, where we are dealing a lot with race and police brutality. And they're also both set in New York. One of them is in, I think they're both actually set in Harlem. Crazy. But Riot Baby is more of a look on family and close bonds between a sister and a brother, and how they are dealing with the sister that ends up having some mystical powers, and then the brother that ends up in jail. And a lot of things were not explained in terms of kind of what her powers, like the extent of her powers. We saw a lot of different things that would kind of just pop up. She had the ability to see into other people's memories. She could kind of fly or teleport. When she got angry, things would break. There was just a lot going on, and I feel like in terms of metaphors, this could definitely be a metaphor for rage, and like female rage, and specifically black female rage, because of seeing all of these injustices and the fact that she wants to help her brother get out of jail and can't necessarily do anything about it. But the problem I've had with this book is that I feel like it was constantly trying to build up to a resolution, and then we never got there. I feel like they were kind of scheming or had this idea in their heads that she was going to help him get out of prison, or kind of do something against the regime and against the system that is so unfairly targeting them. And I feel like we were kind of building up to this idea that she was gone for long periods of time, kind of discovering her own powers. And so I feel like there was that build up that she was going to do something. She was going to learn how to kind of take them down in a way. But the resolution kind of just never came. I feel like it ended on such an open note where things were up to interpretation. We see the perspectives change from the girl Ella to her brother Kevin, and then there are time skips, but neither are explained, and so you kind of just have to go along the ride with them. And I just feel like the themes were very important and very, very distressing. Kind of similarly to Black Tom is the fact that we could really feel their emotions. There was the quiet rage as well as the outrage, I guess is the way that I'll put it, where you can see the external expression of rage and how that can destroy, versus the internal expression of rage and how that kind of like eats you from the inside out. You know, it just follows these two on a very non-linear path to their undetermined future. So it is very much just a character study between them. So there wasn't as much plot. This was like around a 3 stars for me. Next, the book that I read after this was The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest. I thought that this was really cute. It's a romance about a writer and a girl in the publishing industry who sends this email to the writer of her favorite book and doesn't really expect a response, but he does respond, and then they kind of correspond for a while, and then turns out that he moves into the same building that she lives in New York. And I thought this was really cute. I mean, I really like books about books, obviously. I thought the aspect of their shared passion was such an amazing little thing to witness. I found it really cute the way that they would bond over books and writing, and I felt like their characters definitely went through the necessary growth that they needed, because they were both really missing out on the confidence, on self-confidence, and not really believing that they were worthy of being in a relationship with each other, that they weren't really good enough for each other. And so I think by the end they sort of really realized that they did build up that confidence for themselves and to be able to support each other as well. There's not really much else that I'll add that maybe I didn't already say in my last video, but this was cute. I liked it. It was nice. The last book that I read this month was Piranesi by Susanna Clark, and this was really cool. I really liked this book. It was not what I expected. I didn't really have an expectation, but it also wasn't what I expected, if that makes sense. Um, I can't tell you anything about the plot because it is very much just more vibes than plot. But then when the plot comes in, you're like, oh shit, no way. So it literally is just all up to you to try and figure it out, and it will slowly be revealed. Regardless, I thought the writing of this was beautiful. I really liked how there were little slice of life moments where we got to see the main character really appreciate the life and the world around him. And I just thought he was like the sweetest main character. He was a cinnamon roll. He had like just really good intentions, which is his own personal downfall in a way. But I don't know, like it was beautiful. I thought I don't really know how I feel about the plot. Like I'm not mad about where it went, but it definitely isn't what I would have pictured. But thought that whole aspect was very interesting and added a whole nother depth to the story that I never would have imagined. But on my way to try and figure out what was actually happening, I feel like I came up with so many different types of metaphors for what this world that this main character was living in is, the house that this character is living in, and what the different weather changes meant and all of that. So I thought it was definitely a fun little mental exercise for me to try and pick apart the hidden messages, which was not at all how it ended up being in the end. But regardless, I had a lot of fun with this book. It was very enjoyable. Okay, as per my last wrap up, I also included my favorites of the month that were outside of reading. So I wanted to do that again this month. So I have 6 categories: book, song, show, movie, highlight, and goals. And so here we go. My favorite book was A Court of Silver Flame. My favorite song, for those who might listen to a bit heavier music, please check out this band. They are so underrated. But my favorite song was Easily Erased by Boundaries. It was a new release and it popped off. It was amazing. And I'm going to see them in concert next month. And oh my God, you have no idea how excited I am. Please check them out if you like heavy music. And for those who don't like heavy music, trust me, I got you. This is a bit more like jazzy. I really don't know what genre it is, but it is jazzy. It's called Must Have Been a Ghost. My favorite show that I watched was Vox Machina. I finished the 2nd season, and boy oh boy, this was such a fun season where we got to see so much more into the backstory of each of the characters, which we've been waiting for. You know, I love this show so much. It has a piece of my heart, the way that I love like every single character, and I love the fact that we got to see so much more character lore. I love that. My favorite movie, I didn't watch any new movies this month. I only rewatched movies. So this was kind of hard because I rewatched like 3 of my favorite movies. I already started rewatching Saltburn. I'm watching that with a friend though, and we watched half of it, but we still haven't finished the last half. And then I rewatched Shrek, which was amazing. And then I rewatched Inkheart, which is like, oh my God, like it has such a piece of my heart. So literally all of those would be the contender for my favorite movie this month because all of them are favorites. I mean, I wrote down Inkheart, but it really could be a tie between Inkheart and Shrek. Like they're up there. They're amazing. My highlight for February was the fact that I started BookTube, and it's been such an amazing month so far. I'm so grateful for all of the lovely comments and the welcome that I've received. I'm so happy to be here. I'm having a lot of fun, and I love talking to you in the comments. And I'm excited to see how I will continue to grow on this channel. And another highlight is that I feel like I had a lot of time to recharge this month, a lot of time that I needed to just be alone. And honestly, I feel like that helped me out a lot with things that I've been going through recently. And I feel like that recharge time was highly, highly necessary. And I love just being alone and just not really having any sort of expectations or not really needing to do anything because now, like, quite a lot of deadlines for things had already passed. So I had quite a bit of time that I could just do what I wanted to do. And then I did absolutely nothing, and it was amazing. My goal is to start writing my thesis. So, things aren't totally like the pressure's not totally off. Like, I still have like deadlines and shit that I need to keep up with. But I think the time that I had to recharge and just completely be alone was much needed. That now I kind of need to reassess my deadlines and my priorities and start writing my thesis, which I actually am kind of excited about. I know it's going to be a kind of scary process, the fact that I'm going to have to write so much because I'm doing my master's. So this is going to have to be extensively longer than my bachelor's thesis, but I am very excited about the topic that I chose because I'm very passionate about the topic and very intrigued to see what sort of results I'm going to end up finding. So that should be pretty fun. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I'm sorry if things were repetitive or didn't make sense. But that's what you came and signed up for when you clicked on my channel and my videos. So I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you are having an amazing reading month and that maybe you can pick up some recommendations. Please let me know what your favorite book of February was, and or if you've read any of the books that I read and you have similar or opposing opinions. I don't know. I don't care. Just comment what you want, what you feel your heart is telling you. Yeah, I don't know. Have an amazing day. Bye.